Western voice teachers already do a highly creditable job of providing vocal training in multiple musical modes, such as musical theater, CCM, pop rock, and of course art, song, and opera. Nevertheless, we often do not know how to teach singing effectively to students who hail from a non-Western culture or whose primary musical language is not European. As technology continues to shrink the globe, voice teachers everywhere can benefit from moving their sphere of expertise to a wider audience across the globe. Voice lessons are now being taught on Skype, giving teachers and their students the options of being half a world apart. And certainly since the 2020 pandemic began, teaching lessons in an online platform became a necessity. Voice lessons may be perceived as elitist in some circles, but vocal music is universal, and the demand for hearing it, making it, studying it, and believing in it will not go away. Voice teachers can be a part of the change we want to see in our splintered, jaded world by teaching with globally inclusive awareness. In 2016, I accepted a position teaching voice at the American University of Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates. Sharjah is known as the cultural and educational emirate, while nearby Dubai strives to be known as the commercial or business emirate. Within a couple of square kilometers of AUS, there is a medical and dental school and the University of Sharjah, where all instruction is in Arabic. There are several colleges of higher technology for various subjects and a police academy. All of these institutions of learning are privately owned institutions founded in 1997 and supported by one man, His Highness Sheikh Dr. Sultan bin Mohammed Al Qasimi, who holds two earned doctorates, one in history from the University of Exeter and another in political geography of the Persian Gulf states from the University of Durham, both highly regarded institutions in the UK. He is also a recognized playwright and supporter of the arts, and I am proud to call him my boss. AUS has a higher percentage of international students than any other world-ranked institution, according to an analysis of the UK-based Times Higher Education data. Some 84% of the university's student body is made up of international students who come from nearly 100 different countries, including but not limited to India, the United States, Canada, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Africa, Pakistan, Southeast Asia, and the UAE. Every single lesson I teach, every single learning interaction in or out of the classroom is encountered and shared through these multicultural lenses. This amazing experience has challenged me to reduce my teaching to the most universally accessible concepts I can find. Consequently, I have created a way to reformulate my tried and true in the U.S. methods to encompass the diversity of the students I now teach. One of the first things I noticed with great surprise about my new students was how much they already knew about Western culture through movies and popular music. A student's mobile phone went off before class began with a Game of Thrones ringtone. With wide eyes, I asked him how he got that ringtone. Everyone in the class laughed. "Oh, Professor, that's Game of Thrones. Surely you've seen it." "Well, of course," I answered, "but I'm surprised you have." They've also seen Breaking Bad, Dexter, Suits, and know all about SpongeBob, The Simpsons, and all the Disney princesses. I quickly realized that my students' knowledge of Western culture, especially American, was already on a par with my own, and this surprised me. I had assumed that my host culture was as ignorant of my culture as I was of theirs, which was a big mistake. Coupled with this, however, are my students' own cultural strictures and family practices, most of which are much more conservative than are commonly found in today's average American families. The family is still greatly respected, and its rules are adhered to in a way that American youth have been fighting for decades. Many of my students come from families for whom educating a child is an investment in the entire family's future. There is no American-style Social Security in the Emirates or India. When parents have aged out of working, it is expected that their children will take care of them in every way. Therefore, the most highly valued career choices are ones which provide hefty incomes, and music has never been that. The majority of my applied students are taking voice lessons as a minor, not a major field of study, and sometimes simply for fun. This influences the repertoire choices I make for them, and I'll address that issue later in this presentation. A huge positive to working with students from a different culture can be found in how the meaning of the lyrics is approached. My students often come from ethnicities that include ancient oral traditions, and they are very quick to pick up on the idea that performing a song is more about communicating oral value than about singing correctly. Research has shown that the process of teaching music performance in the West has typically been centered on the development of technical skills, with less importance being given to teaching musical creativity. This is something I have consciously chosen to change when teaching my multicultural students by using an approach more centered on learning than on teaching. Most of us vary the delivery from student to student, but basically rely on our tried and true teaching competencies that have always worked for us. This is easy for us because our cultural milieu is the same as our students. We can change that by structuring our skills training to be more about the learner's needs than about our own comfort level in teaching. In my own classes, I find myself less geared towards achieving perfection in my students' singing as I am towards giving them tools to perform with confidence and success. This means teaching the basics of posture and breathing and less emphasis on teaching Western music history through repertoire, which I would totally emphasize when teaching American voice majors. For instance, I will assign a highly accessible, easy song by Schubert or Schumann to teach German diction, along with a specific skill set such as sostenuto or agility, and not because I want them to thoroughly understand and experience the song cycle concept, as important as that may be. I will mention that in passing as we study the piece, but it is not my primary focus. Instead, I will emphasize basic pedagogy and emotional connection at the same time. Musicological topics are not always necessary when the singer cannot effectively sing the song yet. I will use the songs I do assign to help them develop skills of musical interpretation and to help them develop independence and individuality as soon as possible. I want my students to take ownership of the song, even if it's not perfectly executed, and learn performance as a skill they can use throughout their lives in whatever fields of work they may find for themselves. A fine example of this skill is found with Nurhan, an Egyptian girl who fell in love with On My Own from Les Mis, the first time she heard another student singing it. For this song, she became incredibly goal-oriented. She worked so very hard to perfect that song because she wanted so very badly to sing it. It had personal meaning for her, and everyone who heard her perform it was blown away. There was a distinct break between her well-established natural belt voice and her Western-style head voice, but no one who heard her sing was the least bit bothered by that. She grew immensely in confidence through that song and now cannot wait to get back to lessons this fall. My biggest challenge with her will be to find appropriate repertoire that both thoroughly engages her imagination and teaches her the skills I want her to develop at the same time. There are socio-cultural elements in place with many of my international students, which sometimes foster and sometimes inhibit the development of musical creativities and performance. Chief among these is religion. Teaching students who come from a conservative religious background, whether Muslim or Christian, always requires careful consideration. This is true in American culture as well as non-Western. Many years ago, I taught a homeschooled 16-year-old girl in Anchorage, Alaska, whose father was an emergency room physician. Her mother made it perfectly clear to me that Brianna was not to sing any songs where romantic love was the central theme due to their religious beliefs. The parents did not want their daughter exposed to licentious lyrics and wanted to approve her repertoire in advance. Wow, I thought, there goes Caro mio ben and most of the other 24 Italian songs and arias. I almost chose not to teach Brianna, but I also wanted to rise to the challenge. So when assigning these early songs, clearly about love, I chose to explain to both parent and student that these lyrics communicated an idealized concept of romantic love, that the language was 300 to 400 years old, was very sweetly expressive, and not to be construed as erotic in any way. The parents accepted my explanation, and Brianna studied with me for an academic year, becoming a lovely young singer, and all I had to do was honor their socio-cultural beliefs, which were not my own. There is a common thread in Islamic thought which states that anything which does not lead one towards Allah is to be eschewed. Likewise, any public calling of attention to oneself is also to be avoided. This has enormous consequences for musicians and performers in the Arab world, and is even more impactful for Muslim women who are singers. Certainly, there is a large body of contemporary popular or folk ethnic music in Arabic, and it is to be noted that the two best-known purveyors of this music are women, Kulthum and Fairuz. Again, the repertoire I choose with my students must have an uplifting or inspiring effect upon both singer and listener alike if they are to feel they are operating within the bounds of their prevailing traditions and culture. Western culture emphasizes self-expression. Many other cultures do not. Building musical confidence becomes a much deeper and less shallow endeavor with these more traditional cultures. It is only through respect for your students' cultural environment and through choosing repertoire which helps inculcate the most genuine values that you can begin to build the trust necessary for a successful student-teacher rapport. Only after establishing trust can we begin the next phase, the pedagogy of singing to create success. Beginning your teaching conversation with "What do we think we know?" is easy to appreciate and welcomes all kinds of knowings. At the same time, it directs the conversation towards how your student came to know what they know. A pedagogy of creativity is a pedagogy of values. You will be surprised at what your students from diverse cultures already know, and this is as good a place as any to begin teaching pedagogy. All you need to do is ask them. This bullseye chart effectively shows my teaching layers, beginning with the most fundamental skill of body alignment and posture in the very center, and building outwards from there. When our students from divergent backgrounds take part in reciprocal learning and receive mutual responsiveness from us, they begin to build bridges of knowledge and comprehension between local traditions and musical cultures of the world. My students already know what good singing is, and they already know how to do it. What they don't know is how I want them to accomplish it, and more importantly, why. These 4 skills are ones that voice teachers worldwide consider to be absolutely essential. I have lumped some categories together because they are so closely related. There is also a PDF document with all the exercises, which I will only discuss briefly, and that information is available at the end of the presentation. Body alignment and posture. I have developed a 10-step process to explain posture for singing, which, when broken down, is really only about one thing: building a stable platform from which the singer can leap into artistry. I begin breath management skills with the sibilant S, taught at the same time as posture alignment. You open the voice to ah on the same exercise. For instance, sa, sa, and then bring it into a head tone, sa, etc. I introduce the gasp or the gola aperta, the open throat sensation during inhaling. I move quickly into agility exercises, which are almost always present by week 4 to 6. These are important in producing a more efficient coordination among all the separate parts of the vocal mechanism. I then encourage thinking a new vowel on each and every tone to balance the breath tone throughout the vocal line. Lastly, I introduce projection, which introduces the concept of extending the voice to fill the space. In resonance and vowels, I find a natural production of each vowel based on vernacular speech because it has less entanglement than a student's perception of vowels in singing. Many students have a difficult time understanding that singing, the vowel is not exactly the same as in speaking. I use the IPA equivalence chart that I will give to you if you ask me to bring about natural vowel sounds. We briefly explore each student's native language to find our own equivalents. We also explore vowel elongation as a continuation of natural speech and then transfer that to the exercises. Using nasal continuants and consonants to bring about a rapid coupling and release of the nasopharyngeal and buccal resonators. This is from Richard Miller. Again, different languages present varying aspects that either help or hinder singers. For instance, Arabic has 2 different sounds and 3 different k sounds, which traditional Western singing languages do not have. Asian singers, for instance, have no difficulty finding a nasal tonality. It's easy to use this in the nasal continuance consonants exercises. But teaching them to drop the tongue or jaw to achieve a more resonant sound may take extra time. You'll need to explore these on an individual basis. Using the downward sigh on an ah or an o to encourage bridging the passaggio events present in every voice is especially important in male singers trying to transition to a lighter, more resonant sound. In articulation, I teach the tongue and lips to quickly enunciate the consonant or word while not interfering with the breath flow. Exercises involve using different families of consonants to help the tongue become very quick to return to a desired position for maximum resonance while keeping the base of the tongue and the jaw as loose and relaxed as possible. These performance and emotive aspects can only be taught by trying them on and wearing them around the studio. I use emotion cards and gesture cards based on Ann Baltz's OperaWorks training sessions, and these are highly effective in getting students to finally realize the fun, the beauty, and the transcendence of singing. These aspects I often teach in the weekly voice studio class, where everyone's inhibitions are broken down and they learn to trust their audience. The biggest thing to facilitate genuine self-expression is to choose appropriate repertoire. What's appropriate? That which the student wants to sing and/or that which you need them to sing in order to grow their skills. A happy medium can almost always be found. Recently, Amani, a graduating senior whose ethnic heritage is half Sudanese and half Arab, told me she wants to sing Burn from Hamilton. I purchased the song online after doing a little research about the song and also how it might fit into her voice. We chose a key and began to sing it. After 2 lessons, it became apparent that this particular song in any key simply did not suit her voice. She was the first to admit it. The tessitura and range were all wrong, no matter what key we chose. We experimented with several different keys, but none provided that magic clicking into place that we were looking for. We dropped the song. Amani came in the following week wanting to sing that 1975 Minnie Riperton hit, Lovin' You, and had already downloaded the music. Again, not a good fit for Amani. At this point, I began to question what she was really asking me for, and we talked about it in detail. She said she wanted something to complement her personality. Sweet, like Lovin' You, while bringing out some theatrical elements in performance, dramatic, like Burn. I pulled out Popular from Wicked, and she fell in love with it and performed it beautifully at our Soirée Musicale spring concert. In closing, I'll leave you with a few thoughts about repertoire. I almost always choose repertoire in order to teach skills, specifically the skills of agility and/or legato, because these skills demand excellent foundational breath use. With rare exception, Italian is my beginning language of choice because there are only 7 different vowel sounds for the 5 vowels. I allow time for the student to perfect those vowels before moving into more demanding vowel languages such as French or German. Usually I choose an English song next. Most of my students know several languages, which help them learn a new, unfamiliar one. However, our program is not a major in music, so I am not as confined by the pedagogical demands and expectations of most higher education programs. For their initial foray into agility in singing, my male students seem to enjoy the more aggressive Vittoria Vittoria, while my female students enjoy Gial Sole dal Gange. Many of my students are also very drawn to the poetic impact of the song. If they love the words, the meaning, the concepts, they'll work very hard to get the diction and musical elements down. Again, I'm not constrained to making sure they know all the Fauré or Schubert standards. We have the freedom to choose songs they truly love. Having said that, it is also my belief that no student should sing a song he or she simply does not like. There is enough repertoire out there that surely I can find something that satisfies us both. Matching a particular voice with a particular song is definitely an art, but it will come with teaching experience and from attending conferences such as this one. I hope I have awakened your desire to embrace students of other cultures, especially non-Western cultures, with this brief presentation. These beautiful students that I have had the privilege to teach for the past 4 years have taught me much more than I've taught them. They've taught me that an open heart is always the best heart to have, that success can be measured in often contradictory and surprising ways. that winning is not necessary for growth of self-esteem and knowledge, and that people are pretty much the same everywhere, no matter the cultural climate, if you approach them with a desire to help them achieve their innermost dreams. Thank you for listening today, and feel free to contact me at the email address on the screen. Happy teaching.